Okay. Okay, we're going live. We're going live. Okay, let's go here. Let's go here. Let's post it. Okay, here we go. I wanted to react to the first video. Oh, here we go. I don't know. This is Mark Bone. I like the guy. He's a lot into documentaries. Used to follow him more before. Not now so much, but I want to see his take on cameras because you might know or you might not know. He's a Sony shooter. Many Sony shooters these days, because if you're working professionally, you're pretty much doing stuff with Sony. Many reasons, but if you're doing stuff, if you're a camera pro, if you're working, if you're getting paid, you're probably using something with Sony directly or indirectly. So it's interesting to see. It will be interesting to see Sony's reaction to all this. As a Sony user, do all these cameras make you want to jump ship? Does it make you jump ship? Want to jump ship? I myself, as a Sony user, not really, because everything you have is already sold. But I want to see what people are talking about. Let's hear what Mark has to say.
Cowabunga, what a time to be alive as a filmmaker. This is one of the craziest, most exciting years for cameras. So much so that I'm kind of breaking my silence talking cameras and want to talk about all these new amazing cameras coming out and kind of some of the swings and misses this year. So if you want to jump ahead to when I start talking about those cameras, you can go to this point. But I wanted to give a little.
It's interesting he didn't put any Sony cameras.
I am not the most technical filmmaker. I know enough, but I like to rely on professionals. There's people like Gerald Undone who will give you all the dynamic range stuff that you need to hear about these cameras. But I want to talk more about their use on set. And the one thing I really want to give you before you go into this video is when it comes to cameras, it always feels like the grass is greener on the other side. But as the old adage goes, it's not greener. Water your own lawn. What I mean by that is it's not about the camera you're actually holding, it's what's in front of it. What are you shooting? We actually just took one of our films that we're developing, a TV series, and we took it to some amazing producers in New York, and now we're gonna be pitching it to some of the biggest streamers in the world. When they asked what camera we were using, we told them it was an FX6, shooting 422, 10-bit. There was nothing to do with RAW or any of that other fancy stuff, and they didn't care, because they were excited about what Michael Del Monte, who's directing that series, had put together with our editor, Louis Gordon, as well as Andreas Gonzalez. professionals from AOD. But let's talk about these cameras.
This is so true. At the end of the day, people that are working deliver their video. They use whatever they have, and usually is stuff from years ago. It's not the new, because you already know what it works, and you've got your lot set up, you've got your workflow set up. You're not going to have it all depend on post, especially because unless it's a huge project, in which case you might as well just do it. Just because I think, because if you shoot a lot, margins are getting tighter, and it's best to know. It's best to know what you have to do. It's best to know what you need to do, because editing and post-processing is going to take so long. So now, like these YouTubers, well, they use log just to, but if you know what you're doing and you know what the end result is, you're not always going to use log. You're not always, because that's going to be a headache, because you have a one-time shot and you want to be sure of what you're taking. You don't want to take any chances. So let's see what he got to say.
Now let's first talk about the latest release, and that is the Canon C400. I've had the chance in the past to shoot on the C500 Mark II and a little bit on the C300 way back in the day, and they were great cameras, but recently it hasn't felt like Canon has had a really great competitor for the FX6. The C70 to me was a bit of a conundrum. I know a lot of people, like my good friends from the Floberg team, have crushed it on moving still with the C70, but still that Super 35 format to me is a bit perplexing, but I don't know, I'll die on this hill. My FX9 has full frame. I can crop into Super 35. So why start with Super 35?
That is such a good point, because something like the FX6 is such a solid camera. It's got all the limitations you want to, but it's such a solid camera. And you got the C7, it's like, but then you got the FX3, you got the A7S III, and they're just solid cameras. Solid means that they're just going to be reliable. You're going to find it everywhere. People know how to use them already, and they have the A7 IV, some of them, with so many things that you can just add to that lineup. It's just crazy. FX3, FX6 is such a tight ecosystem. It's just crazy. Yeah, and you know what the camera is going to do. And the FX6 is not a young camera. What year is that from? Yeah. FX6 220. Really? Wow, I thought it was older. Really, FX6 is 220 and FX3? Uh, 21, wow. I thought the FX6 was longer. Let's keep going.
Love full frame 24mm cropped to 235 at about an f-stop 2. To me, that's one of my favorite cinematic images, wide and close. And to me, when I start shooting on the Super 35 format, I have to start getting really wide lenses. That said, the C400 now has full frame, and its price to me is what is most intriguing. Canon has jam-packed so many features, it doesn't leave much to be desired with this camera. You're talking 6K at 60 frames, the traditional 4K, I can't believe I'm saying traditional, but the 4K at 120 frames, and it has the internal raw light recording and all the dynamic range that you could expect. Canon is claiming 16 stops, but so does every camera manufacturer out there. I find true in real situation, it's always ends up being about a kind of an 11.5 to.
It's actually surprising Canon has to sell this camera at that price point, because they used to always be the leaders, and set up the price. But Sony is launching like a $2,500 camera, and Canon is launching an $8,000 camera that probably does more. but it's so because they can't compete. You know, the FX6 has eaten so much of their market. You really can't compete, and I'm sure Sony's waiting for this to put out the FX6 too. But you really don't need it. People are happy with the FX6.
14 stop range that it actually feels like. Now, caveat, I haven't used this camera yet, so I'm just making guesses based on what I've shot in the past with other Canon cameras. But having that internal ND, oh, that is a gift, because I know everyone was always talking about the amazing additions of those ND adapters with the other Canon R series mirrorless cameras, which to me was just kind of goofy. I would rather have the ND built into the cameras. It's becoming kind of a standard across the industry. Even Arri has introduced it in the past years in their cameras. So shooting with cameras where you have to add additional ND to me is now kind of a thing of the past. But it's so great to see Canon really lean into this box cinema style camera shooting with triple base ISO. That's one thing that Sony has really been able to run ahead of so many people. It's clean, high ISO. Like the 12,800 on the FX6 and the FX3 is beautiful. It has a little bit of noise, but it's something that you can easily get rid of. I haven't shot with the 12,800 on Canon. I would be really interested to know what it looks like, but it's so great to see that Canon is now embracing this high ISO shooting. I'm finding on film.
Yeah, a lot of people think like, hey, you're a Sony fanboy or whatever, but really, everybody's happy for that. You know, who's not going to be happy that that Canon has a great camera? We have all shot on Canon at some point of the day of our lives. So, and we all, secretly love Canon, and we just wish it could solve that problem. And it just hasn't. You got the C70, but it just hasn't. It hasn't because other brands have moved further up. Let's see what else we have.
I'm developing recently. It's been so helpful just to be able to hit that 12,800 at a quarter of ND and just keep shooting. For documentary especially, it keeps your workflow on set seamless. I tend to not work between native ISOs. When I shoot on my FX6, it's 800 or 12,800. I don't like to do the EI exposure index boosting. I just like to look at it as if it has 2 ASA ratings, as if it was a film camera. And this is great to see that Canon has that, because I do find on the FX6 that jump between 800 and then suddenly 12,800 is just too much sometimes. So having that 3,200 in the middle that Canon has makes this one of the most ideal documentary cameras. And on top of that, they have also solved something right out of the gate that happens on so many cinema cameras, and that's the EVF placement. The little LCD screen is often when you put it on your shoulder, so close to your face. But Canon, right out of the box, has had this extension adapter. Well done. This is a camera to look out for. This is definitely a competitor. And what I like most about this as a Sony user is it's going to really push Sony to make some improvements on the FX6 Mark II. Next.
That's my same thought. This is Sony is gonna take all the things into consideration. Let's see what it comes up with. Because I think, I might be biased on this one, I think all these cameras have launched with stuff that is existing and that is better than whatever was. But when FX6 launched with that, it was, or whatever, the variable ND and the dual ISO, they were really innovative things in those days. It wasn't just something better than whatever existed. So I want to see what new things the Sony is going to bring. Maybe they can't. Maybe the market is saturated.
So we're going on to the second cheapest camera on this list, but it packs a powerful punch, and that's the Blackmagic pyxis camera. I've always kind of felt like Blackmagic has just underpriced their camera, their hardware, to get people into their ecosystem of software. So the prices on these, to me, are always so interesting because they're always so low. But it also kind of signals to me that I don't know if people are really adopting these cameras that often. I've used them in live video settings. I just don't see them that often on cinema sets. In the past, I've found the Blackmagic cameras, due to the battery life and just kind of form factor, haven't been something that I've wanted to use. But this is the first kind of Blackmagic box camera. I think it might be the first Blackmagic box camera, but the first one that I'm actually interested in using, especially because it's using the BPU battery system, which I'm quite often familiar with using my Sony cameras. My biggest thing out of the gate that I don't like about this is no HDMI. I typically use SDI, but there are times when I want to use smaller monitors or have just wireless adapter feeds, or in the case of my FX9 that I'm shooting on right now for my YouTube stuff, is I often will feed it into my computer for Zoom calls and I need that HDMI cable. So no HDMI in this is a small hit. It's not enough to get upset about it because most cinema monitors are SDI and SDI is more reliable with its locking mechanism, but kind of a weird move by Blackmagic. I guess they just ran out of real estate on that camera. The Blackmagic also has its internal RAW recording. They use their kind of Blackmagic Lite. What's the mode called? Oh, it's a B-RAW? Yeah, it's B-RAW. You got a B-RAW, man.
You embarrass me.
No, the B-RAW on the Blackmagic is a cool format and allows you to get that extra dynamic range and pull back the highlights and the overblown windows, which to me is kind of the only time that I really care about RAW. I don't shoot RAW, but RAW for me, for windows, when you're in interior, is kind of the time that I really wish I would have RAW, when you're trying to pull back some details in clouds or skies or windows. But for the most part,
the thing about Blackmagic cameras is that the price is very low, which is good for some people and not for others. Believe it or not, price it makes a difference, because you want something not expensive, but like rent houses and stuff, they charge you more. And the thing is that you could have $3,000 camera does all that stuff, but the ones that already are now are pretty good. So yeah, why people? I mean, a lot of people use Blackmagic, but at the end of the day, it's just like, I don't know. I've used a couple of plugins. I wasn't a big fan. I'm not, because I mostly work by myself, and then you've got to carry all these hard disks and stuff. It makes your life so much more complicated. So I might run out of light.
My opinion, RAW is overrated. What? Most of my films have not been shot on RAW. You'll be fine with 422 for most of what you're doing. We even took our film Clear Sky to Nice Shoes in New York. That whole film was shot 422 10-bit, and the colorist loved it. She said it was as nice as an Alexa camera, and we never shot RAW. So don't worry about it, especially you, Calvin. You can chill out about the RAW. For me as a Sony user, no native E-mount. Gotta use the EF lenses, which is fine. I've kind of moved away from EF lenses, not because I don't like them, but just because I'm in the Sony world now. I mostly shoot on Sigma lenses, I mostly shoot on iron glass, or as you know, I really do love all my vintage lenses that I'm buying off Etsy, off of people who are going through their garages and finding their grandfather's lenses, but it's not the worst thing. There's also a native PL adapter for the camera. Now, the confusing thing for me is no internal NDs, but I think Blackmagic is just really trying to focus on that price point to get people who that extra couple grand that it would cost to go up to an FX6 or the C400 are just gonna lean in on the Blackmagic camera. It's kind of strange, but you can always drop ND in front of your lens with a matte box or with a thread. I just would have liked to seen Blackmagic do this so that it was a true competitor to the C400 and the FX6 kind of category. But then again, people are loving shooting on their FX3, like me. And cameras like the FX30 also don't have internal ND. And I have a external ND on this right here, case in point. God bless you Blackmagic users. You're so dedicated. You've really leaned into some very strange cameras in the past, but it looks like you finally have some decent.
But that's a good example because he is FX6 user, but he has an FX3. And he probably has a S7, F4 somewhere around, or FX30 around. Because when you don't want to take your FX6, you just take your FX30 or your FX30, S7, F4, or your ZV-1, A65, 6700, and that's a big factor because there's and they work exactly the same. They have the same and pro features and stuff. I don't think that's the same with the Canon because you're gonna have the C100 and the R5 or R6 or R8. They're not the same cameras. They don't have the same log profiles. They don't have the same menus, and those two, that's important.
Decent battery life that doesn't need a V mount. Very happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is a camera that has caused a lot of controversy for a fellow Canadian just down the road, and that's Gerald Undone, and it's none other than the Panasonic GH7. I have fond memories of these cameras. I used the GH4 for my first music video that I shot with Mati Happoya years ago, and that was a fun camera, but man, was the low light terrible on it. And I gotta say, Micro Four Thirds is a psycho format. I know Gerald has retracted his statement about saying that it's dead.
Yeah.
But to me, it is just bizarre. Let's not say it's dead because there's plenty of you still.
My exact reaction. It's bizarre. I mean, recommend if you already have in the Micro Four Thirds system, fine. But recommending Micro Four Thirds, in 2025, I just think it's bizarre. It's like, where are you going to go from there? You know, I wish the GH7 would have been a box camera. That would have made sense because if you're already in the Micro Four Thirds, because I don't think there's a box camera with the LED filters, beam mount batteries. That would have made sense. You could even charge 1,000 more. You got a small box camera that's a cinema camera. That would have been really cool. But I just don't understand it. Bizarre, exactly.
Still using it, but what's so frustrating for me is I love the 24mm, like I said, on full frame. To me, that's one of the most cinematic looks ever. That style of shooting always draws me into a story. And in order to achieve that same look, you gotta go to a goofy 12mm lens on the Panasonic. If you're shooting with a 24mm on a Micro Four Thirds, that's the equivalency of a 65mm on full frame, which is wild. That's a very tight lens. So when it does come to the Micro Four Thirds world, you're kind of committed to those lenses, and it means a whole new investment. That said, the IBIS on the GH7 is insane. The tests I've been seeing people produce is incredible. And with that tiny body, it feels like you could get some really cool documentary moments because it's so light, you can run behind someone practically and it looks like it's on a gimbal. And there's some extra modes on that camera that allow you to get rid of that corner pinning wobble. My favorite thing about the GH7, and I wish Sony would do this, is ProRes RAW. That's awesome that does it internally. I think just everyone's ready for litigation battles, it seems like. Although now that Nikon owns Red, it's gonna be some deep battles going on in court. But I think they can get away with that with ProRes RAW, although I know Sony couldn't do ProRes RAW because of patents, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But the GH7, for the price range, it's the cheapest on this list. It's just over $2,000. You know, if I can't promote, I don't feel good saying go shoot on 4 thirds just because it's just not something I do, and I don't want people getting committed to one set of lenses their whole life, because you can't put a 4 thirds on anything else besides a 4 thirds. But if you wanna live in that ecosystem, if you're a wedding shooter and you're okay using it for that format because it is so light and so viable and it has that great now adapter for 32-bit float audio on top, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's kind of a great camera to buy at that price range. I can't say I can highly recommend it because I haven't used it, but so far it's looking pretty promising. Go try it out. Protein shake break. Probably sounds disgusting. We should get some ASMR here. I'm one of those weirdos that drinks their protein shakes just with like warm water. That's probably like a quick indication if someone is mentally unwell. That and if they like 4 thirds. Okay, shout out to my mom for this Christmas gift, reminding me that I am a director. She's actually said that to me before. She goes, you're not a YouTuber, you're a director. Today, I'm a YouTuber. Now, if all the stats is coming at you and it's confusing you, we've built a PDF here that you can download in the description, which gives you kind of an overview of all these cameras and a few others, their price points, what they're offering. To me, the biggest realization this year is that Sony needs to lean in on an FX6 Mark II and introduce their, what is it called? It's a really weird name. The XOCN format, which stands for Extended Tonal Range Original Camera Negative. Man, Sony with like the XAVC eyes and all this, just the weirdest camera names. They just need to have a simple, catchy name. Like ProRes RAW is cool. There's also B-RAW that Blackmagic uses. Canon has Cinema Raw Light. What does Sony have? OXCN, AVX, AHD, HD, all these crazy names. But if Sony does introduce that format, it's not technically a RAW, but it is a 16-bit. They have had it in the Burano, and it's, to me, one of the most interesting formats on the market right now because it is compressed, but it gives you all of the fidelity in the bit depth that you would expect from a RAW image.
That would be
and
really
if
cool.
Sony can put this in, it can kind of silence the people or at least satisfy the guys and gals who really want to use RAW at its full capability. Like I've said, most of the time 422 is good for me. There are a few times when like blown out windows and skies I want to pull back. If Sony can build the XOCN into kind of their more affordable camera systems rather than just gatekeeping it in the Burano and in the Venice, that to me will actually change the whole landscape of the cameras. Of course, Sony, you can get the RAW externally, but who wants to shoot externally? I don't want to have to shoot on a Ninja. I don't want one extra cable going to an extra external recorder. I like to keep my systems as simple as possible. When I'm shooting documentary, I want to be thinking about my camera as little as possible. That's why I often haven't shot on red, because it just burns through batteries. There's a lot of extra gear I need to add to it. It's not as intuitive as a camera, in my opinion, at least for me, than using stuff like I've used in the past, like the C500s or the FX6 or the FX3 or my FX9. Those cameras to me lean into the documentary world a lot easier. And of course, those cameras are much easier to work with audio, and audio is so important. Go watch my latest video about audio. I go on a big rant about this because I'm just finding people are really, it's kind of underwhelming, the audio.
So I couldn't agree more.
Back in the day, everyone's audio was good and their images were mediocre, and now it's kind of flipped around. Like everyone's so cinematic and their audio is just mediocre at best. Last thing I'll reiterate is it really doesn't matter. Case in point, we shot with an Alexa 35 and then also 3 FX6s, and we mixed them together and it looks fantastic. And if you have a great colorist, they can match those little tonal differences. I think the obsession over the gear and the technical aspects is an easy thing to do because it's less scary than actually thinking about your storytelling, your directing, or your editing. Those things are tough. To me right now, the camera world is kind of like a bunch of people standing around a car engine talking about the specs of the car and being afraid to actually go out and drive it and become a better driver. So get out there, get shooting. Don't worry about what camera you do or don't have. But honestly, some of these new cameras might be the things you want to invest into. Maybe you want to start thinking about selling some of your gear right now so you're ahead of the price dips for when those cameras actually hit the market. Very excited to see this. Very excited to see all these other manufacturers release these cameras because it's going to push these other camera companies, looking at you, Sony, to start introducing things like internal RAW and just go to battle out here. I hate goodbyes, but I don't know. I was going to say I love Terry Black's barbecue. It was good. It was good. It was certainly not bad, but I don't know if it was the best barbecue I had in my life. But the whole experience was.
So that's what he talked about.
Walking through there, yeah.
That's actually very good. I mean, that's pretty much my thoughts. So the PDF, you probably have to sign up or something, no? To his work. I'm already signed up to everything. But in my opinion, yes, I couldn't agree more with what he says. At the end of the day, you're just shooting. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The camera doesn't matter. You know, people swear by whatever you learn or whatever you like. But I think right now, no matter what camera you have, you're set. You know, are you going to jump ship now? If you have a Blackmagic 6K, are you going to jump ship now to, I don't know. I mean, this looks really good, but would the Sony users change that? This is for Canon users. But the Canon users already have the C70 and the 6500. Are they going to also buy this? I'm not sure. I don't know. If there are more, C400 versus FX6. And the problem is also that
this could be an A cam for me one day.
That a lot of people talk without actually knowing what they're saying.
Maybe not today, but one day. Primarily because this does feel like a Komodo X competitor.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
They're not in the same. They're not in the
No.
same league.
No, they're not even for the same
This
type
is
of
a
project.
prosumer camera. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying at all. I think if there's any camera that should be worried of this camera,
Did I say worried?
you tried to compare.
I said it's in
it.
the same
It's
league.
not in the same league.
Wow.
They're totally different cameras.
Canon, we are our own people.
No, y'all are fighting with Sony over there for the FX6. That's what this camera feels like.
Wow.
This feels like an FX6
That's
style
some
camera.
shade.
Nah, they just threw a bunch of like broadcast type stuff in there that I think will be helpful for those type of productions. Like it's just, I'm sorry, like 12 stops or 12-bit RAW.
Okay.
You're just not.
What are you working with on the
Si-
Komodo X?
I want.
Is it 16?
It's 16-bit RAW across Red RAW. Now, granted,
Do
I
you
like the
even
different
know what to
flavors.
do with that much color?
Yeah, I grade it. You can see it in the shadows. You can see it in the skin, bro.
You don't need 16-bit.
Okay. Look, my thoughts are I think this is a good camera. I don't think the same productions that are going to look at a Komodo are really going to be looking at this camera. Because this camera is set up for a different type of use case. Like even the little port they put on the front to be able to run their servo lenses or whatever, like
Yeah.
that's for a different type of production. Like I think you're gonna see this on a lot of like documentary style stuff.
Yes.
A lot of stuff where you're shooting live productions and you're using it on sticks and you're working with those servo type lenses. I think that this will be a lot of production companies like we're just shooting a interview style video.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
You're not making a film, I think, with this camera.
Hold on one second. The rebuttal. What two cameras were most compared to each other when they sort of came out at the same time?
Okay, so I
The
understand you are going to say it's the
C70
C70 and the
and
Komodo.
Komodo.
But the reason
Because-
wasn't because of the types of cameras they were. It
Because
was the price point.
Absolutely. So, what I'm saying is, I don't think that Komodo X users are going to go and sell their Komodo X's. I don't think that production houses are going to get rid of their Komodo X's. I'm not saying that. I am saying that at probably $2,000 less. Is that fair?
How much is this new
Although the Canon comes ready out the box.
one? Okay. What does this one come out? What is the price?
8,000.
8,000.
Ready out the box.
If you are buying a camera
Yes.
solely because you're like, I have $10,000 to spend. Now I'm gonna go buy a camera for $10,000 because I have $10,000. I think you're making a really bad decision.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So,
No.
anyways, hold on.
No,
I didn't
no, no,
rebut
'cause
yet.
that's
I
the
didn't rebut yet.
problem.
I didn't rebut yet. I'm just saying. I think that. Well, I can agree that there are some things that Red obviously is doing better at that price range. I don't know that they are a direct apples to oranges comparison, like sort of deal. But I will say that at $8,000, they are going to retain the people that would have jumped ship to Komodo or to an FX.
No, really.
Or that sort of deal.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that like all of a sudden like the world is going to sell everything they have because the Canon is so much better. But like a person like me, when I'm thinking about jumping into maybe a completely different ecosystem,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, maybe they can grow with me.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that if you were currently in the Canon ecosystem and you were thinking Blackmagic Ursa or you were thinking Sony FX6, then yes, you might be like, oh, okay, I'm good now. I'm comfortable with where we're currently
Stop
sitting.
the bleeding, Canon.
Yes,
Stop the
and
bleeding.
but my thought is,
Welcome back, folks.
when
My
it
name's-
comes to cameras in this space, I think people have very specific needs. Once
Oh,
you
yeah.
start
Yeah.
spending $6,000 to $10,000 on a camera, you are looking specifically at like, okay, what do I need this camera to do,
Mm-hmm.
and does this camera do it? And
The global shutter and the 16-bit.
So
yeah.
that's the only
doing
that's the
virtual
only
production stuff.
competition that's the only pushback I'm giving you on your.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is I don't think anyone who was going to buy a Komodo X is looking at this camera and going, oh, well, this handles everything I wanted out of the Komodo X for $2,000 cheaper, because it doesn't. It doesn't have the stuff that the Komodo X gives you.
No, that's fair.
That's the reason why people pick the Komodo X.
100% fair.
That's the only pushback
Yes.
I have for you. Now, For all you Canon fanboys out there who just want to be very excited about this camera, you should be.
Yes.
You should be very excited that Canon finally
crazy.
gave you something to work with. You know what I mean? Especially.
I would agree with that, except one thing. That if you're already in the Canon system, it might be the drop that that breaks the Canon's back, because if you're in the Canon ecosystem, you already have the C70 or the C500 or both, and this camera is right between it. So we can look at that too, because for example, this guy, he's
If you came from Canon land like I did, you have been waiting years for this.
That's
type of
interesting.
release. I was waiting so long that I didn't want to wait anymore, and I jumped ship to Sony. I had a Canon C70, and it hit so many of the checklist items that I had for me to run a successful shoot. But there was just a couple of little things that made me want to explore different camera options. And then there was big things that made me want to not be invested in Canon anymore. So for this video, the C400 looks very, very enticing, but Canon had to release this. They have been going years without making a flagship style, full frame RF mount camera that was built for production. Do
Welcome
they
to the
have
Crimson
full-frame cameras?
Engine.
They have a bunch. Do they have RF cameras? They have a bunch. They don't have one that is
Welcome
made
to the
for
Crimson
the
Engine.
This is true. Here's
Canon
another video.
C400 launch day.
Because
First
this guy's he
new
jumped to
true cinema
Sony,
camera
but then
in 5
this other guy
years.
is
Time to
a
talk about let's
true
get into it. So
Canon
Canon
fan.
officially announced the
True Canon fan.
C400 EOS cinema camera.
And,
yesterday. It is a RF mount.
He's not
with
gonna
a
buy it.
full frame on a C500, C300 type body, though a little bit smaller, a little bit more.
And he's the
refined.
target fan. I mean, I
8,000 documentary
I would
shoot
think
screen.
so.
It's like a real one lens solution.
he loves the
The camera
camera.
itself has a lot of incremental improvements, but the kind of thunderbolt of this announcement is the price for a full frame, fully featured cinema camera coming, $2,000 in under what the
He's a
C300 Mark
huge Canon
III
fan
came
guy.
in a couple of years ago at Super 35mm is pretty amazing. I will absolutely get my hands on one of these and create a masterclass for it. On Canon Masterclass, I have detailed camera guides that let you get up to speed with your Canon cinema camera and create great footage in half the time. It's very typical of Canon's camera announcements to have something that increase in voltage where you need a lot of weight. It really depends on what you're using it for.
So he
There wasn't
says he's
really
not going to buy
anything
it.
big that Canon could have put into this camera without making huge trade-offs. It would have been interesting to see some super high dynamic range like the Alexa 35.
That's interesting. And this is another.
Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. I know, it's been a while, but I have been really busy.
He's another-
I've been to
another
NAB in Las Vegas. We wrapped up
Canon
multiple
guy.
short films, one of which is going to be released at the end of this month.
That
and
he's not gonna
we
buy
also
either.
shot a couple of other projects, which I
That
will
is
also
very
do
interesting.
breakdowns behind the scenes, so on and so forth on this channel in the very near future. And I also just returned from Cine Gear in
What
Los
about
Angeles,
the-
where I had the opportunity to take a closer look at the newly released Canon C400. Most of you here on YouTube know me as the Canon guy, because for most of my career I actually shot on Canon cameras. Not only the smaller mirrorless and DSLRs, but also the entire Cine line. I owned the Canon C300 Mark III, the C500 Mark II, the C200, and multiple Canon C70s. But relatively recently I sold all of them. I got rid of my C70s, the C300, and I switched completely over to Red. And now the question is the new Canon C400 enough to make me switch back to Canon, sell all of my Red camera gear, or is it too little too late? So let's start talking about the Canon C400 in general. Let's just go over the specs and what this camera is all about. So first of all, it's the first full frame RF real cinema camera, except for the Canon R5C, which I'm shooting on right now. But now we have an actual Canon cinema camera with a full frame sensor. Not only is it
He did
a
not
full
switch.
frame RF mount sensor, but it also features a 6K.
Helplessly hoping her harlequin hovers nearby, awaiting a word, gasping at glimpses of gentle true spirit. He runs.
The thing is, like, if you look at right now, if you look at, for example, Panasonic. GH6, for example. Let me see how many videos are there this month on the GX6, GH7. GX7, of course, is a new launch, but how many people are using that? How many videos do you see of something like that, you know? Not that many, you know? I mean, of pure GH6. And if you do, for example, like the C70, probably more. So people are still using this. Let's see, in the last month, there are videos with the I tried C70 at the same time. C70. There's still videos with the C70. No videos with the GH5, the GH series. Sony FX, there's videos with the Sony FX, all kinds of videos. This week, FX30, FX30 is a lot of videos, FX30, ZV1, you find a lot of people using it, but I don't know, Blackmagic Pixel. Yeah, these YouTubers, but I don't know if it's in people's hands. But even if you go here and you go say Blackmagic 6K, there's still videos on that this week. Blackmagic's beautiful video, this one, with these armless, beautiful lenses. But the videos on the Panasonic 6K this week, or the FX30, the C70, there are videos this same week of people using it about Panasonic GH5. GH5, let me see if there's any luck. There might be even more this week. There's no video, yeah. Some GH5, but nowhere near. So that's the thing. I don't know. Okay, that's about it today. And bye bye.